everyone, and welcome. We're so glad to have you here with us for this Darien City session focused on climate and sustainability communications. My name is Anne-Marie Clary Rauker, and I'm a Senior Communications Officer at ICLEI USA, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. So before we get started, just a quick couple housekeeping notes. Feel free to use the chat and introduce yourself. You can share your name, your title, and where you're coming from. And at the end of the session, we'll have time for Q&A with our speakers. So feel free to utilize those fun Zoom features we all are familiar with, such as the Q&A box and the chat box as your questions come up. We'll be monitoring those. All right, so today's conversation is all about how local governments are engaging residents and using tools to drive climate action. Communities have so many ways to do this, from town hall COPs, which brings residents, leaders, and government together for dialogue, to interactive dashboards that make progress transparent and actionable. The Town Hall COP initiative is a global movement that empowers local and regional governments to connect to their communities through international and national climate processes. Each event is community-led, nationally relevant, and designed to translate those global goals into meaningful local action. So that those outcomes feed directly into the national climate plans and the global climate agenda. So you joining us here today, so maybe you're asking yourself this question: how do I make my climate message lead to real action? So whether you're thinking about hosting a town hall COP, organizing a community event, or building media presence around an initiative, this session will give you actionable insights to make sure your message resonates and brings people together. Because fundamentally, at the heart of all of this work we're doing is community and communications and engagement. Because climate action only works when people are part of the process. So with that, I'm really thrilled to welcome our panel of speakers joining us from across the globe. We'll be hearing from a range of perspectives and experiences that show how different communities are bringing residents into the climate conversation. So to get us started, I'd love for each of our speakers to introduce themselves. So let's begin with Gabrielle, and then we'll go around.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me again in the Darien City's webinars. I'm an environmental engineer for the City Hall of Campinas in São Paulo State in Brazil, southeastern of Brazil. And I mainly work as a program that try to implement the NBS, nature-based solutions, in the territory, and also a program in the metropolitan regions of Campinas, one of the coordinators of the Town Hall COP as we're hosting here in Campinas. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabrielle. I'll invite Tim to introduce himself.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Tim Kovac. I am the decarbonization strategist with the City of Cleveland. It's a city located in Northeast Ohio in the United States. And in that role as decarbonization strategist, I oversee all of our climate work, including the recent updates that we completed to our climate action plan and our government operations climate action plan, which we call our municipal action plan. And we're also working with some local partners on a regional climate action plan that covers the Cleveland metro area. And as part of the climate work that we're doing, and what I'll talk about today is the climate action dashboard that we launched a few weeks ago to try to track the implementation progress of the actions we've committed to undertaking. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tim. And I'll invite Franco to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm Franco Kreiker. I'm the Chief of Communication of the Ministry of Environment and Circular Economy in Córdoba, Argentina, in the center of Argentina. We've held a couple of months ago the International Climate Conference here in Córdoba. It was a great experience, and I'm looking forward to share it with you in a couple of minutes. Thanks a lot for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. And last but not least, Fortuno, please introduce yourself.
Hey, how's it going? Part of my voice too. I'm just on my third week of COVID. So, but I'm Fortino Morales. I'm the sustainability manager here at the city of Riverside. So Riverside is about 60 miles east of LA, on the inland side of things. And so, one thing that we've been working on is a climate action and adaptation plan. And so the town hall COP fit really well with that engagement. With the broader community. So really excited to share more about that with y'all today.
Thank you for joining us, even when you're still feeling under the weather. We appreciate it. Wonderful. So thank you all for those introductions. It's really exciting to see the range of perspectives represented here. And I know our conversation is going to be rich with insights. So to kick it off, we're going to start with the US context. So again, today we're going to hear from Riverside, California about their town hall COP, and from Cleveland, Ohio about their new climate action dashboard powered by ClearPath 2.0. So we'll start off with you, Fortino. So Riverside hosted a town hall COP to engage residents on climate action and contribute to the global conversation. So what motivated the city to organize this event, and how did you make it inclusive and relevant in a landscape where people may feel, fatigued or polarized?
Yeah, I think. Oh yeah, okay. There you go. So I wasn't sure if I was off mute. Yeah, no, I think. Thank you for the question. And I can share some slides real quick just to kind of share a little perspective on it. One of the main reasons that we were interested in hosting the climate, what we called the Climate Action Town Hall, was because we are in the midst of our climate action and adaptation plan. So that's kind of the logo that you see there in the middle. And this is going to be kicked off last year in 2024, and it's going to we won't complete it until 2027, because we are also doing it in conjunction with our general plan update. So that's something that we are really excited about, having this as a really great opportunity to engage residents in the community here in Riverside. So one of the things, the ways that we made it inclusive was to have these climate briefings at the beginning. So you can kind of see a little bit of the rundown here in terms of the program. We did have our mayor open the ceremony, and then we had climate briefings. So we wanted to get level set everybody with an understanding of the latest climate science. So we had Kale from ICLEI USA kind of sharing what's happening on the international level to get a sense of other cities and towns and best practices. We had someone from the Fifth Climate Assessment in the governor's office share the latest science that they're working on for the climate assessment. And then we were also sharing about our climate action plan. And at this point, we had a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. And we were able to share that with the residents and really talk through what does that mean? What does that look like to general public, right? And folks that maybe don't aren't in the nitty gritty of greenhouse gas emissions. And so having this briefing at the beginning was really important. So that way we had the climate breakout sessions in the second half of the event to really share what their reactions to what we shared, but also what they're really passionate and interested in. And I think just one last thing that I'll share was that we did change the name, only because as we were planning our town hall COP, we got a lot of questions about why we were going to be talking about police. And so I think a lot of people didn't understand COP, the Conference of the Party, as a term. So pretty quickly we realized we can't use that term just because it had different connotations in our community. So we switched to the Climate Action Town Hall to be more relevant to the community here. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate a lot of aspects of that, especially briefing folks so that you're all on the same page before you kind of dive into the nitty gritty, because not everyone's in the weeds with, greenhouse gas inventories and all of that information. And appreciate you calling out, the reference COPs, can have different connotations. And I think it's very thoughtful to reframe it so folks are more excited and engaged. Awesome. With that, I'll pivot over to Tim. So Tim, Cleveland just launched a new climate action dashboard powered by ClearPath 2.0. Can you explain why the city developed the dashboard and how it will help residents understand the city's climate actions and support Cleveland's net zero goals?
Sure. Again, thanks for having us. So the city of Cleveland has been working on climate action for a little over a decade now. The city released its first climate action plan back in 2013. And when I joined the city about 2.5 years ago, the main responsibility that I had was to try to make sure that we were updating our climate action plan because we hadn't done so since 2018 was the last iteration of it. And as we were going through and initiating our kind of public and stakeholder outreach processes, one thing that we heard a lot of feedback from the folks we were engaging was that it's great to do the plan, but we want to see how you're actually implementing the plan. We want to make sure that the things you're saying you're going to do are not just on paper, and that we're actually being, going to be able to hold the city's feet to the fire and track the progress that you're making over time. In the past, the city had kind of an internal dashboard that we posted on a city website where we gave kind of some annual updates of some of the work that we were doing, annual updates on greenhouse gas emissions, annual updates on the share of vehicles that in the city fleet that have been electrified, things of that nature. But that work kind of fell to the wayside back in 2019, and we hadn't really been sharing that kind of information to the public since in the past 4 or 5 years. And so, as I was hearing that feedback from the public and starting to look at examples that we could potentially pursue, I noticed that our colleagues in Cincinnati, which is in the southern part of Ohio, had launched their climate action plan on the Climate View platform. And I thought this is an incredible platform and something we'd really like to also be able to take advantage of. And I just kind of stowed it away in the back of my mind for a future reference. And then right around the time as we were kind of putting pen to paper to start to draft the climate action plan, ICLEI sent an email and said, we've partnered with Climate View and we're going to be launching this ClearPath 2.0. Are any communities interested in being kind of in this initial cohort? So I immediately raised my hand and said, Cleveland wants to work on this. Can we make the timeline work? Can we be part of this initial cohort to take advantage of the platform? And we got positive feedback from Matthew Katz, who brought us on board and worked very closely with us, introduced us to the Climate View folks, talked about all the features of the plan that we could take advantage of. And then we really worked hand in hand over the course of several months as we were wrapping up the work around our climate action plan in the spring. The plan launched on Earth Day, so in April of this year. And I started working closely with Matthew to make sure that we could get our greenhouse gas data uploaded onto ClearPath 1.0 so that it could get rolled over to ClearPath 2.0, and then figuring out how I could get trained on the platform, train my intern on the platform so that we could take all of the data that we had internally and translate that into the platform so that the public could actually access that information. And I think it's been great so far, and I can share the screen to give a very quick overview of what it looks like. And there's going to be customization for every city, but a lot of the kind of the basic bones and structure of the platform is going to be the same from one city to the next. So there, you have a landing page where you can share information, and then you have these 3 tabs, which are emissions, which are greenhouse gases, transitions, which are kind of the goals or the objectives, how you're planning to electrify vehicles or shift to clean energy or electrify buildings, things of that nature, and then interventions, which is more in the nitty gritty of what are the actions that you're going to take to actually bring those goals and those objectives to fruition. So it's been a great way that we can take all of the information that we have internally and not just kind of dump it on people in meetings or in presentations, but actually allow them to play with the data to see what's going on. So you can dive in and actually play around with the greenhouse gas data and see, I want to know what transportation emissions look like. How have they changed over time? Where do they come from? Do they come from vehicles? Do they come from aviation? A lot of folks want to know how did COVID affect transportation, airborne transportation emissions, and how has that increased over time since the kind of the height of the pandemic in 2020? And so you can really go in and play with these data. And this has been something that we've been very excited to be able to share this information with the public, but also to share the information with stakeholders and even with internal city staff, because it's often hard for me to be able to say, you're working on renovating buildings for residents, and you want to know how should I make sure that I'm aligning my work with the city's climate action plan. Well, I can say, if we look at the transitions, you can come in here to the built environment information and actually be able to see what is the rate at which we need to be renovating buildings, what is the rate at which we need to be electrifying buildings. You can actually dive into that information, get really down into the nitty gritty and see, well, we need to be doing it at this number of buildings per year, or this percentage of the housing stock needs to be renovated on an annual basis to keep us in line with our targets. And all of that information we've been able to enter directly into the platform to kind of give that custom understanding of what the climate action plan is going to look like in practice, of the targets that we've set for ourselves, and how we're going to actually be able to track progress over time. And it took a lot of work, both internally and with ICLEI, to make sure that we could get our plan directly translated the way that we needed it to. But I think the great thing about the ClearPath 2.0 platform that we've been able to take advantage of is that it's set up for anyone to use. Any city can come in off the street and say, I want to be able to, I need to be able to see how quickly I need to electrify our vehicle fleet to be able to put us on a path to net zero, or I need to know how quickly we need to transition our electricity generation to clean energy to put us on a pathway to reach our emissions targets. And you can play with that information. There's sliders, there's all sorts of great interactive features, but you can also completely customize the platform to if you have the data and the analysis that you already need. And that's what we worked to do, was to take our climate action plan, overhaul the back end of the platform. So I created different transition elements that aligned with the six focus areas in our climate action plan. And I was able to integrate all of the information, the analysis, the data that we had done as part of that CAP update into the platform in a custom manner so that we could make it work for us in the way that was directly, replicable for the climate action analysis that we had done. And so far, we've gotten great feedback. I've had a number of cities already reach out to us to ask, to learn from our lessons, and it seems to be well received so far from the public. So we're going to be updating this on a regular basis over time to share information with the public. I think we'll use this as a way to kind of give an annual update of climate action implementation over the next 5 years or so. And I think the other really great thing is that we were able to figure out how to link the platform directly into the city's open data platform, or open data portal, which we launched last year. And that way, it's not just that we're directing someone to a third-party website on ClearPath. We're actually embedding it directly into the city's website. And that way, people can just search climate action on the city's data portal and go directly to the platform without having to figure out how to get to another website as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Tim. I know ICLEI USA and Climate View have thoroughly enjoyed collaborating with you. And I really appreciate that you called out this feedback loop with residents, you heard what they were seeking and you found a platform that, enables you to enhance accountability and transparency through this public dashboard. And I love to hear that it benefits folks within the city as well, because, when you're a big city, you want to make sure we're all on the same page with the different initiatives. Awesome. So I'm going to pass it back over to Fortuno. For you to highlight what lessons did Riverside learn about speaking meaningful conversations and motivating residents to take action through your climate action event?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, so I think there are a couple of different lessons. I think the first was just the silos, and so bringing together so many different stakeholders. We had professors, community members, folks from local agencies and surrounding cities. One thing that they were able to do in just the discussions was to be able to share and educate each other about the different work that's going on. I think so many times, especially with climate work, you can kind of get stuck in your silo and also sometimes feel like, hey, there's not a ton going on, or why aren't we doing X, Y, and Z? And being in a room. One example is we had a resident that was like, how come we're not putting solar everywhere and in every house and every opportunity? And we had someone from our utility company there, one of our assistant general managers, able to articulate, hey, this is, we are actually doing quite a bit. And also, there's some challenges. There's some real technical challenges that we have. And so to be able to have a forum where that type of conversation is taking place, I think was really important for our community generally. Riverside, it can be kind of a purple area politically. So climate isn't always necessarily the biggest thing on residents' minds, although it increasingly is. So it was nice to have a forum to be able to do that. And one of the things that we also came out of that was that there's interest in understanding different areas and sectors within the climate work. So whether it's working in water, waste, energy, the residents really wanted a forum to be able to learn more about those things. And so we're actually working on a climate conference in this coming April as part of what's coming out of that for our residents and for our region, and purposely making it really broad. So there's energy conferences, there's water conferences, but we really wanted to have one that had all of those different sectors together. And that way residents can come and learn about the different efforts that are taking place and realize that it's a much bigger ecosystem that's working in our region towards these goals. And so I think that was one of the big lessons and something that we were able to act on. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you calling out silos that exist within departments across a whole city and including different stakeholders. I think it's really powerful that you're meeting people where they are and kind of, creating a safe space where all residents can come together and share and learn. And I'm in love with this climate conference approach. Can't wait to hear more, and congratulations on those, next steps. All right, I'm going to go back to Tim. So Tim, you highlighted this a bit earlier, but I'd love to hear more about, what do you hope residents will do with the dashboard, and how will it make the city's climate goals transparent and actionable?
Sure. So I think a couple of things we want residents to do is one to help educate them about the things that the city is doing, because it's often it's not easy to break through the wave of information and noise that you get from in the current media environment, where there's a constant barrage of information and news stories, and especially in the U.S. with the situation politically at the federal level is just a never-ending stream of new information and controversies and stories to try to keep up with, and the things that are happening at the local level can very easily get drowned out and fade into the background, and so it's if the city is, for instance, we had a low and moderate income rooftop solar project a couple of years ago, and that's a wonderful story that we love to share the lessons of, and we were hoping to build upon that with funding from the Solar for All program through the Inflation Reduction Act, but that funding is now in limbo. But that's the type of program that where we want to be able to share that great story about here's what we did, here's the benefits, here how it directly provides cost savings and other things for our low income residents who need this and who need this assistance the most. But when when we can't get that message breakthrough, help that message break through, it's hard to share that information. And so by having a one-stop shop where folks can go in and see all of the work, whether or not we're whether or not we're on target, how we're falling behind target, that can help to make and hopefully get over that initial hump to share the stories of the progress that we're making. I think a lot of people are rightfully cynical because a lot of communities make very big splashy commitments about we're going to go net zero or we're going to go carbon negative by 2040, 2035. Some communities in the US have committed to, and residents are rightfully suspicious that can happen, especially in the current environment where there's really no support whatsoever at the federal level anymore. But this way we can actually share the data in a more transparent manner that folks can see what's happening. Like if they see, for instance, it looks like our emissions might go up a little bit in 2023 because of some changes in things that are kind of outside of the city's control, some kind of heavy manufacturing emissions, and so they can say what happened here and why is this changing, and how can we assist, how can we work with the city, or how can we advocate for things to happen that can help to reverse that trend and get emissions back on the decline. So I think it's a way to share our story and communicate our message in a different way that folks who are like me, who are very interested in getting into the data and getting into the weeds can use that information. Two, it's an advocacy tool, both so that we can say, here's what we're doing to kind of toot our own horn or be very forthright and transparent if we're falling behind, as we are in certain areas. And then for the public to take that information and say, I'm going to call on the city to do more, or I'm going to call on the city to follow through on its commitments, or I want to advocate to my member of council or my county council member, whatever level of government we're talking about, to give the resources and the tools that the city of Cleveland needs to carry through on its commitments in the climate realm. And then, it's just another way for us to also share that story on outside of the city as well. And so I mentioned that a couple of communities have reached out to us. Obviously, ICLEI reached out to us to share this information, and the fact that the city's dashboard was, I think, the first or one of the first to launch on ClearPath 2.0. You shared that in your newsletters, and so it's a way to help share the city's progress and work, because we're a mid-sized city and we have LeBron's from here, so people know who we are, and we have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but it's not always a city that people think of as kind of being a leader on climate action. And so this helps us to share that message, to show what we're doing, and to be kind of innovative and data forward, and to share the message of what's happening in a kind of mid-sized city in the industrial heartland of the U.S. And how if we can make progress here, you can make progress in your communities as well.
Thank you, Tim. That's very, very powerful. It's really important to have, this information available and digestible to like all folks. And I really do appreciate how your insights highlight how the dashboard is not only a way for folks just to get into the data, but also to see the story and also build trust between folks. So thank you so much for those insights. And the final question will be for both of you, both US cities here. And it's just in general, what advice would you give other cities looking to engage residents through either, town hall COPs or under a different name or platforms like ClearPath 2.0? And whoever wants to go first.
Yeah. So I think one of the big things, especially if you're looking at doing a town hall COP, is to really work with partners. So we were lucky to work with our local university. We were able to work with the state's Office of Climate Assessment. And then of course with a lot of support from ICLEI. And I think that level of engagement and planning and assistance is really, really crucial to bring a good broad spectrum of participants to the program. And then, I think the climate communication piece of it and having some way to be able to communicate. Oh, sorry, something fell back there. To be able to communicate climate information in a way that's really accessible to a broad swath of the community. So understanding that there's going to be folks that attend your event that are just learning about this. Some are even skeptical, and you also have folks that are in the technical realm and really dive deep into a lot of the work around the climate. So having presentations and education around that broad spectrum, so that way everyone can be on the same level playing field, I think is really helpful. The other thing I think, and this I think Tim was kind of mentioning this too, is that I think especially in the federal landscape right now, I think there's a lot of interest in having a place of hope, a place of movement and action, where when it comes to climate work. And so the local is kind of the place to do it, right? And that's where you can see those actions, and residents really, I think we're hungry for that and wanting to see what is the city doing? What are that movements that we're going to be making, and how can we contribute to it? So having that kind of space, I think, is really important, for residents. So we did block off half of the event just for discussion time and facilitated discussion. And typically that feels like a lot, especially for a conference, but I think it's such a powerful piece of it, that ensuring that you have time for people to really discuss and engage. And then we ended with wrapping up for the whole summit. So breaking out of the group discussions to really hear from the broader community. And I think that was helpful, again, to be able to share where is everybody at. And I think one of the things that we had a planner that attended and was like, I didn't know that our residents are at this level of sophistication when it comes to climate action. And so they were able to take that back and really, like sit with that and say, okay, we can take it to the next level because the residents are really interested and want to see that action. And so I think it helps all groups all around there. So yeah.
Great. I think a couple of things that I've thought about as I've gone through this process is one, when you're working on these kind of big planning processes, oftentimes it's easy to get lost in the process and not think about the implementation, because our climate action plan was a 2-year process. There were multiple phases of engagement. I had to do a greenhouse gas inventory, a climate risk and vulnerability assessment, deal with dozens of stakeholders to identify actions and refine those actions over and over again, go through multiple RFPs and things of that nature. And it's really easy to get lost in the process and not think about what you're going to do after you're done, because you just want to get the plan done. But you really need to be thoughtful as you're going through and saying, if I'm going to do this action, how am I going to measure it? And do I have the data that I need to measure it? And if I don't have the data that I need to measure it, how can I get it? Because if you want to do this type of dashboard where you're tracking your implementation, you're reporting out to the public, you need to have the data to back up that information. And so being able to say, for instance, when we're talking, we set what I consider to be very ambitious targets around vehicle electrification, where we're calling for, I think our goal, I believe this is correct, that our goal is 100% of new vehicle sales are electric vehicles or zero emissions vehicles by 2040, which is very ambitious. But we need to be able to have the data that we need to track registrations and vehicle sales. And until very recently, those data didn't exist. And so I would have just been guessing as to what those numbers were. But I was, I know the state of Ohio is now providing vehicle registration data from alternative vehicles in a public dashboard where I can go in and download that and track that on a monthly basis. And so knowing that allows me to then say, okay, if we're going to set this target, here's how I'm going to track it, and here's how I'm going to be able to share that information with the public. So you need to make sure that as you're identifying your targets, as you're identifying your goals and your actions, that you are thinking about what the metrics you're going to be using to to track that progress are, so that when you work with this type of dashboard or something similar to it, that you're actually able to put that into the platform to track your progress. But also to make sure that you are The data, I'm an analytical person. I love data, and so it's easy for me to kind of get lost in the weeds and not necessarily be able to attach a narrative to how this is translating, or be able to translate the information about metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, or number of megawatt hours of clean energy generated, to something that a normal person who's not me understands. And so you need to be able to figure out what are the kind of tangent, what are the very tangible ways that we can explain what this information means. And I tried to do that in a couple of different ways in the climate action plan, and we're continuing to try to do that going forward, which is to take advantage of tools like, for instance, at least for the time being, EPA still has what's called a greenhouse gas equivalencies calculator. So you can go in and say, hey, if we're going to electrify 1,000 vehicles, that's going to save a few thousand, tens of thousands of metric tons of CO2 every year. What does that mean? And that'll help you to translate that information into number of trees planted, or amount of waste that's recycled instead of sent to a landfill, or even the number of times that a smartphone is charged. And so being able to translate that information is something that's very tangible, and figure it out in as many different ways as you can, so that you can reach different audiences. One thing that we've really had a lot of luck with in terms of making an impact and sharing this information is to just talk about air quality, because Cleveland is a city with a lot of legacy air quality issues. We're still in non-attainment for ground level ozone, and it's actually gotten worse in recent years. And so we got significantly affected for the first time by wildfire smoke in 2023, and it's continued to come back in 24 and 25, and it looks like it's just going to be the kind of the status quo going forward, that we're going to keep getting these infusions of wildfire smoke from Canada. And so being able to say, if we electrify our vehicle fleet, or if we shift to clean energy, we're going to see emissions reduced by this much, and that's going to prevent 10,000 asthma attacks, however many asthma attacks, or case not now. EPA has some tools now that will even tell you how many cases of avoided lung cancer, or avoided instances of Parkinson's disease. So there's figuring out how you can use these tools that are available to translate the data into something that actually resonates with people is so important. And the dashboard can be a way of doing that, but the dashboard's not the be all end all. You have to take the information in the dashboard and follow it up with regular communication, and regular outreach, and regular presentations to the public to translate that information in a way that makes sense to the general person.
Lovely. Thank you both so much. I really do appreciate you both calling out, having listening space for folks and having those honest conversations, and also just talking about how the amazing work y'all are doing and why communication is important, right? It's always taking that extra step and incorporating in all the work you do, from all the technical stuff and engaging folks in these events. So thank you both so much for sharing how U.S. cities are connecting residents to climate action. We're now going to shift our focus over to Latin America, where local governments are also pioneering the town hall COP model and adapting it to their unique social and political contexts. So in this region, town hall COPs have become powerful spaces for dialogue, bringing together residents, youth, civil society, and decision makers to shape how global climate priorities translate into local action. These events don't just raise awareness, they create ownership and help bridge the gap between community voices and international climate processes. So joining us today are representatives from Campinas, Brazil, and Cordoba, Argentina, two cities that have recently hosted town hall COPs and are here to share what motivated them, what they achieved, and what lessons they can pass on to others. So to start off, I'll go over to Gabrielle. So what inspired the city to host a town hall COP? In particular, how did you involve young people in the process, and why was their participation important?
Okay, thank you. And Campinas has always sought multi-level engagement in environmental agenda, with participations in COPs on biodiversity and climate change in the last 3 or 4 of them. We understand the role of local governments in this international agenda. Therefore, the possibility of hosting the Town Hall COP aligns with our desire as a city, and also as a metropolitan region, as we call metropolitan regions of Campinas, to give a voice to those actors in the region. In addition, with the Campinas Declaration, we also have the opportunity to bring our experiences and aspirations to the next COP in Belém, also here in Brazil. For us, one of the key stakeholders is the young people. So during the process, in addition to extending the invitations to participate in the meeting in this event to important regions university, as we have here in the metropolitan regions of Campinas, and also technical schools. We sought in partnerships with ICLEI South America to bring in local university students as a volunteers during the events, as a logistical or accompanying some panelists and so on. And finally, we also held the climate action campaign convened by the COP13 presidents, awarding initiatives by young people from the region. The 3 best local climate actions initiatives focused on adaptations and resilience in Campinas were awarded. So just one example of this, I highlighted the first place project, they call Women Who Feed Cities, which brings together women from the vulnerable areas of cities to transform unused lands and backyards into spaces for agroecological productions. So that's why we held a town hall COP and also the ICLEI meetings of São Paulo states in Brazil.
Thank you, Gabrielle. I really appreciate the thoughtful approach to engaging the youth from, universities to technical schools and women in this entire process. I'll now pass it over to Franco to answer this question. So for your city, what priorities framed your town hall COP, and how did you connect the discussions at the local level with broader national or global agendas?
Hi to everyone again. Thanks a lot for having me. The first thing I want to say is that I share a lot of the thoughts that Fontino shared with us. In particular, the thing that you said, Fontino, about not many people understanding what COP means. In that case, here in Cordoba, we decided to change the name to the event. And the idea of holding this international climate conference starts for us in November of last year, when 2 things happened. The first one was that our national government decided to withdraw the Argentina representatives from the meeting in Baku. And the other thing was that in this same meeting in Baku, there were 2 important conclusions that emerged from it. The first one was the importance of subnational governments in the fight against the climate change, and the other one was the effort we have to make the environment profitable. Those 2 things were very important for Cordoba. And then we decided to lead the climate agenda here in Argentina, and we believe that despite the national government's negative to address this agenda, it was our obligation to hold an event of this kind in pursuit of the climate action. We have a saying here in Cordoba that is that for global problems, local solutions. And based on this idea, we connect with many local governments from Argentina and from our province here in Cordoba that were working in the same lines of action as us. That's why topics as circular economy, biodiversity, climate finance, energy transition, gender, the role of young people, and many others topics were discussed over the course of 3 days here in Cordoba. We have more than 6,000 people coming for every day to our event. And we believe that these problems and potential solutions are things that not affects the whole world and not just the local part of the world. So we think that our agenda, we can create solutions to global problems. That's the view that we create with our event, and we believe that it was really well welcomed for all the community here in Argentina and in South America. We have representatives from many countries here in Latin America, such as Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador. So we think that the point of view we created for our event was this of creating local solutions for global problems.
Thank you, Franco. I feel like I need to make a poster with that phrase you said. Global problems, there are local solutions. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I really do appreciate the connection you made with the city of Riverside about needing to change the name and understanding that context. So, at the end of the day, all this advocacy work is really powerful, but so are communications and meeting people where they are and how they like to communicate. All right, I'm going to pass the mic back over to Gabrielle for this question. So, what results or new perspectives emerge from the conversations, especially from younger participants? Did the town hall COP influence how the city thinks about engagement moving forward?
Yes, and an important highlight was learning about the young lead initiatives we received through the climate action campaign. I'm sure these initiatives inspired and continue to inspire the local, state, and also federal government's representative present at the event that we held. I would like to highlight the very informative climate just panel that we have, which emphasized the importance and necessity of developing solutions to current problems in a collaborative manners, alongside the local community, which is often affected by the problem, especially the young people. The event also provides an unusual opportunity for connections between the municipality, all the municipalities that we held, the state of São Paulo, and the southeastern, and federal governments, mainly the environmental ministry, and the various partnerships and project opportunities available at the three levels of government. It's important to emphasize that simply sharing experiences and presenting ongoing initiatives is crucial for us. And finally, the Campinas declarations prepared as a final report of the event outlines the principles that as municipalities in as metropolitan regions, we believe should be incorporated into the COP13 discussions. For us in Campinas and Brazil, it's kind of different, as Cordoba and Portino said, because we will have hosting the COP, the next COP. So it's everyone's talk about this here in Brazil today, in a negative and a positive way, of course. But today, for the federal government, it's a positive agenda. So this is easier for us.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing your insights about, building collaboration across all tiers of governments and the importance with the upcoming international climate conferences. All right, Franco, you're up next. What were the main takeaways from your event, both in terms of citizen participation and in sparking follow-up actions?
I love this question so much because before we started to imagine this event we held here in Cordoba, we set one rule for ourselves. It was that we didn't want to have an event that only discussed and talked about the problems we face. We need those discussions to quickly turn into concrete actions. And that led to the signing of more than 6 agreements in the middle of the event we held. Of course, the most important one was the signed by 6 governors of Argentina, expressing the willingness to work together on this agenda, despite the fact that it's denied at the national level. But we didn't stop there. We have also an agreement signed by more than 120 majors that they agree on concrete actions to adapt and mitigate climate change in their regions, in their local regions, in Argentina and in other countries as well. And then legislators and ministers from 18 provinces signed another agreement to also work not only on actions, but on legislation with an environmental perspective. We also brought in universities, and within the framework of the conference, we created the Climate Observatory, that is formed by the 7 universities we have here in Cordoba. And we have more than 6,000 people from the civil society that participate in the event over the course of the 3 days that it lasts. This is what gives us most hope. The other panelists here in this space, they also say that their events bring them hope. Well, for us it was the same, because we sometimes feel alone in working to the protection of the environment, but seeing such a massive turnout for this event gives us the desire to do more and the certainty that we are not alone on this path.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on all those agreements. It is just so inspiring to hear how all these regions are moving from kind of like that planning conversation stage into like taking action. So thank you for sharing that. And for the final question for both of you is if another city was considering organizing a town hall COP, what advice would you give them? Like, what is one thing you'd say is essential to make the process impactful? And either of you can go first.
May I, Franco? May I go first? So I believe that any city considering organizing this event should seize the opportunity for all stakeholders to exchange experience. When I say everyone, I mean primarily civil society, especially in the South Global, the most vulnerable, including young people. The initiative, which I believe is a unique and innovative, of holding the town hall for the COP, it's a unique opportunity for local and subnational governments to have a voice for us, mainly in this year, in one of the most important international agendas.
For me, the main advice I can give to everyone who wants to do an event like this one is the importance of building alliances. I'm sure it takes a lot more of work, but the result it's really wonderful. We worked with more than 10 organizations of all sectors and all the sectors of the provincial government to carry out this event. It was very complex in terms of organization, but it ensured that the topics we covered was those that the different sectors needed and were interested in. In that way, we engaged the stakeholder we were interested in, and we did it by incorporating them from the beginning of the process. I mean, we organized the event along the way with all the stakeholders that were important to us about the topics that we want to discuss. So building alliances for me is the key for having real impact working with this kind of events.
Thank you, Franco and Gabrielle, for sharing your experiences. When we combine these stories with the US examples we heard earlier, we can really see how Town Hall COPs, or a different branded name, is really like spreading across the regions. And we also heard how platforms like ClearPath 2.0 can really help make climate progress clear and actionable. Altogether, these efforts are really connecting those local voices, including youth, into the global climate agenda. So now we'd love to hear from you in the audience. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. I see a few folks have left some, so very excited about that. So we'll have all of the panelists join us for this Q&A session. So to kick things off, I'll start with this one question, and this is relevant to the folks on the line here that hosted a Town Hall COP or a climate action event. Folks are wondering, how was it different from other climate action events you've hosted in your community? Could you share a little bit more about the number of hours it took you to host and any other like logistics for folks to consider?
I'm happy to start. For us, it was a half-day event, so from 9 to noon. And in terms of logistics, I want to say it took us maybe just about 3 months to put it together. Um, and I think that's also kind of a testament to um, the partnerships that we've developed. So really, really leaning on those partnerships with the university, with the state office and governor's office, and then just the broader community to be able to put it together that quickly. So yeah, in terms of hours, it's a little bit harder, but yeah, I'd say, and we have a team of about 3 full-time staff and 3 fellows, so like interns. Yeah.
In Campinas, we have like 2 days of events. A part of them like technical visits, so I don't know if it's count as working beside the city hall. It's like 4 main focal points. We have a lot of efforts in partnership with the ICLEI South America, of course. These volunteers, the young students volunteers, was very helpful because they help us to bring the panelists, conducting the logistics, and also design um, the first draw of the Campinas declarations. That's the resume for the town hall copy report, for example. And so I believe it's this. And I like to say that this the difference between the town hall and the other kind of climate events that we held or participate in Brazil is like this one. It's a with a very different and with pathway and structures and directions focusing on COP13, and also the necessity to bring the young people mainly, but also the civil society, other stakeholders to the events. It's of course this is a main concern about all the local government, but it's easy to forget when we try to design a new event and bring all the stakeholders. So that's why the town hall COP, with the CEO of the town hall COP, helped us to bring these other stakeholders. And also in Campinas, we have this the opportunity to meet the federal government, the state level, and the local level in the same table to discuss a lot of opportunities that the 3 levels have and can combine or share.
Here in Cordoba, we have a 2.5 days event. And the first meeting we held for the organization of this event was in January. So it took us more or less 6 months. We have more than 90 people coming from all across the globe. So that part of the logistics was a little bit difficult. And then we have a lot of help in the building of the event by ICLEI Argentina. Well, it was our principal, our main partner. So it was pretty stressful to organize an event like this, but it took us this time 6 months and many meetings with all our partners.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing those insights. I know it takes a lot of collaboration and hours, and at least for me, a lot of coffee to put those on. So thank you all for doing that work. And then for folks that are on the line, just so you know, in the chat, we have some great resources in case you're interested in hosting your own town hall COP. So feel free to check those out as well. We have about 4 more minutes left for questions, and I have one specifically for you, Tim. So we have some folks that would love to hear from you about how do you break down complex data to make it clear in terms of benefits, what has changed, or how it will change? And perhaps, your dashboard does that very well.
Yeah, I think I saw this question earlier, so that kind of infused some of my responses to the last question that we had. But the I as I mentioned earlier, I think it's important to try to figure out different ways to translate what can be kind of esoteric information into things that are much more tangible for members of the general public. So it can be if we, if we can renovate so many houses or electrify, heating for so many houses, then how many avoided asthma attacks can that provide, or how many avoided days of missed days of school due to health issues can we work with? One of the things that I've been working on in the regional climate action plan that I've been talking about, that I talked about earlier, was that we set a target both at the city level as well as at the metropolitan level of reducing vehicle miles traveled by 15% by 2030 and then by 30% by 2050. So we want to, obviously we want to encourage people to take public transit or walk and bike to reduce the number of people driving cars on our roads. And it can be difficult to fully understand what that means or what the benefits might be of that, because a lot of people are very skeptical of that and think that it's going to, cost them time and money. And so one thing that I spent some time thinking about is how can we use tools like the World Health Organization has a tool called HEAT, which tells you the health and economic impacts of active transportation, of walking and biking. So I was able to work with that tool and then work with another tool that another organization called RMI created that lets you kind of quantify the benefits of active transportation. And we could then turn around and say, here's how many traffic crashes we're going to avoid. Here's how many, injuries or prevented fatalities that we're going to avoid because people are not driving their cars as much. But also, what are the public health benefits of people walking and biking? And so we were able to use those tools as well to say, here's how many avoided premature deaths we can see from people walking and biking more in our community rather than just getting into their cars and driving from point A to point B, because that's how our development patterns are set up, and that's what's most convenient and most available for people. So making sure that we're thinking about how you can take things that again can be a little bit esoteric or a little bit up in the air and turning it into things that are more tangible and more understandable. One of the things that I got really excited about, and I don't know if anybody else felt the same when I was working on our climate action plan, was I came across some research that a climate scientist named Ken Caldera did a few years ago, where they basically did a thought experiment, which was how much energy would it take to melt the entire Antarctic ice cap? And he worked on that with a few different researchers. And what they were able to do is by going through that thought experiment, they were able to say 1 metric ton or 1 metric kilogram of CO2 uh, melts this much ice. And so I was then able to kind of, do some math and put together a complex spreadsheet and say, okay, so here's how much pollution we're releasing within the city of Cleveland, here's how much climate pollution in metric tons we're releasing. That would melt this much ice. That there's this much water in this much ice. And how much area would that water cover? And so I was able to actually say within our climate action plan that if we implement our plan, we could prevent the melting of so much ice to cover the entire city of Cleveland by like hundreds of feet in depth. And so that, I think it's very, very beneficial to just think about all the different ways that you can translate this information into something that's more tangible, that's more understandable, that's more directly digestible to someone off the street. For another one that I think about that I saw a couple of weeks ago was that there was a study that came out earlier this year, and they actually said they were actually able to calculate that every ton of CO2, it's not a, it's a population level analysis. So it's between now and 2100, the end of the century, every ton of CO2 that gets released will take 6 hours off someone's life. Uh, and so you can then turn around and say, what is the implication for the life expectancy of people across the world from what our community is doing or what our community is not doing to address the climate crisis. So I just think it's finding as many examples like you can of that to take this data and turn it into things that are tangible and actually affect people's quality of life.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Tim. It's very powerful to hear how you're taking that data to tell that story. I know we're towards the end of our session, so I just want to say again, thank you to all of our speakers and to everyone on the line joining us today. Don't go quite yet. I would love to have my colleague Katia chime in and share a little bit more about an upcoming Daring Cities session.
Hi, all. And yes, thank you so much, Anne-Marie. And thank you to all our speakers. It was really interesting to hear about the dashboards and also the town hall COPs. And it's nice it's nice to see or to hear what it's like in practice. But yeah, I would just like to take a moment and promote our next virtual forum session, which will take place next week. So it might be interesting for some of you folks. The session will focus on the evolution of climate city contracts and their role in reinforcing national climate plans, and key themes will include the strategic use of co-benefits to unlock finance, as well as streamline monitoring and reporting, and build stronger business cases for decarbonization projects. So if any of you are interested, my colleague Charlotte just put the registration link in the chat. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you there next week. Thanks. Back to you, Anne-Marie.
Great, thank you. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We really hope that you're leaving with fresh insights on how to tell stories that stick and share data that truly connects, spark conversations that drive real action, and bring people together in ways that make climate goals feel relevant and achievable. And with that, that's a wrap. Thank you again, and I hope everyone has a lovely rest of their day. Take care.